For today's project, you are going to need tag paper, a pencil, and your poem or song lyrics that you brought in with you. With your pencil, you're going to be creating lines across your paper, and your paper can turn either way, whatever works best for you. And the lines that you're going to put on here can be straight, curvy. I wouldn't go zigzag, that's going to be too complicated. Keep it kind of nice and flowy side to side. And you're just going to start with a couple different lines. Go really lightly with your pencil. Some of these can go really close together, some of them can go far apart. Give yourself a nice variety. And as I said, draw really lightly. All right. Now you're going to start adding your words to your paper. I noticed that I had a really big space, so I went ahead and divided that up. You don't want things to be too huge, and you also don't want them to be too small. You're going to have to write in these little spaces, so keep that in mind as you're dividing up your space. All right. I'm actually going to zoom in for the next part so that you can see much closer what I'm actually doing. Here's where you need to decide if you're going to stick with pencil and then go over it with Sharpie later, or go ahead and go in with Sharpie right now. My suggestion would be, if you're not real confident, go ahead with pencil first, and you can always transition to Sharpie later. What you're going to do is start writing your words, and they need to fill the space that you have. So they're going from top to bottom. And you may find that as you do this, it starts to not look like a word, and you might forget where you are. So you may want to, kind of cross things off on your lyric sheet. And you're just going to go in lightly and do that. If you were doing this with Sharpie, or if you decide to go in with Sharpie later, it's obviously going to look a little bit different. And that will look something like this. Same thing, same idea. For some reason, I started doing all capital letters. You don't have to. You can do a mixture. And I am using the extra fine point. Actually, this is ultra fine point. That's definitely what you're going to want to use for this. And I just squeezed one line of my lyrics into that. And you can go ahead and outline these. And we'll go ahead and get this first line done. Actually, I'm going to do 2 lines, and I'll be right back. So you see, I've got a couple lines done. What you are going to want to do is finish the whole paper before you go on to the next step. But for sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and show you that next step. Once you're finished, you will take your eraser and erase any pencil lines that are still showing. We want to clean this up. This is why it was important to draw really lightly with pencil for any pencil that you used on this. Get rid of the junk. And we are now going to use watercolors to give it some color. You're going to want to think about your poem or lyrics and what kind of feeling they're trying to convey. Is it a happy song, sad? What is it? Kind of think about that in terms of colors. What kind of colors do you think, if you could see the song or see the poem apart from just the words, what sort of colors would it have? Before you start painting, you need to look at your watercolor tray, figure out what colors you're going to use, and then put water on those colors. Some of you may look at that yellow and say, well, Mrs. Scott, that's all gone, I need a new one. No, all you need to do is put water on it. I'm putting water on any color I think I might use. You can always not use it. You don't have to use it just because you have water on it. Now I'm going to turn this so that I'm not getting everything full of paint that I am not working on. All right, I'm going to use what's called a wet on wet technique, where you just get it wet first, the little area that you're working on. So that's just that one little section, and then I'm going to use my wet watercolors to go right on top of that. Do not rub the paper a ton because you will actually damage the surface of the paper and you'll start having little chunks of paper actually fall off. So don't do that. And what I would suggest if you're using this technique is to do every other section, let those dry, and then come back and do the sections in between. That'll give you a nice clean look. I don't want to see anybody going over the whole thing back and forth with their brush like that. You can do dry or wet on dry where you're actually taking and putting wet watercolor right on top of the dry paper. That's going to give you a much darker watercolor look, so be very careful with that because you may not be able to see your words very well at all. And I'm being very careful not to go up into the paint that I just put on. That's why I say it's good to skip sections. That way you've always got dry areas. Because if I happen to get this blue up here into the other stuff, it's going to be a watercolory mess. Now on these, don't forget to work your name into the bottom right hand corner with the ultrafine Sharpie. Kind of work it into your design if you need to, or add it extra, but it should be somewhere in the bottom right hand corner of your paper. And that is it for this.